Police officer Matthew Kinnie came out in a jail jumpsuit and in chains, accused of killing the 32-year-old mom and carrying out a lengthy affair.
He didn't want his wife to know that he'd been over there spending all this money. He was in love with her.
Kids meet the officer. They thought he was just this good guy, but found out he's not.
Afterwards, the Oxford interim police chief said his department stood firmly behind the Clayton family and not with the accused officer.
We support them and we will stand by them, and we will be direct that we do not support a bond. He needs to be in jail. That's where he should be.
Wait a minute. Ain't no need to today, motherfucker.
They allowed the killer to decide his own. That man came through the bushes while he was on duty
And killed her.
walked in behind my daughter's home, put a bullet in the back of her goddamn head, and executed
And
her.
this bitch laughed.
And they laughed. They should discuss with him what his bond should be. We need help in Oxford. We need intervention in Oxford. Somebody come to Oxford and do something with these motherfuckers.
This is the murder of Dominique Clayton. Dominique Lucy Clayton was born in 1989. She resided in Oxford, Mississippi all her life. Dominique Clayton was always the life and soul of the party. Her friends and family loved being around her, and when the 32-year-old wasn't around, it wasn't quite the same. Dominique, affectionately known as Lucy, was a single mother of 4 children, all aged under 14. Her 2 boys and 2 girls were her whole world, but life wasn't easy. Money was tight, and although she was devoted to looking after her family, it could be tough on her own. Around August 2018, she started dating Matthew Kinnie, who was an officer in the Oxford Police Department and a member of the Mounted Patrol team. He served in the department for around 4 years and had been named the Mounted Patrol Officer of the Year. On paper, Kinnie looked like a perfect, reliable partner for Dominique. However, there was one major problem. He was married. After the death of his first wife, reportedly by suicide, Kinnie had married again and had a child. He also had teenage children from his first marriage, but getting involved with Dominique's family wasn't on the cards, as the couple had to sneak around to be together and meet up secretly for sex. But Kinnie was assisting Dominique financially. He helped her buy a car, and there was talks of him contributing to her rent and helping her to get a house. There were a partnership of sorts, but Dominique wasn't sure they would go the distance. Friend says that Dominique thought she might be pregnant, but she admitted she was worried about telling Kinnie because he didn't want his wife to find out about their affair. She wasn't sure how he would react. Dominique claimed that while Kinnie was possessive, he wasn't willing to commit to her and go public with their relationship, but he didn't want to break it off either. Kinnie would later claim that he tried to end things with Dominique, and in turn, she threatened to tell his wife they were sleeping together. Whatever the truth, it was clear that Kinnie was starting to feel as though the walls were closing in, and Dominique didn't have the happily ever after she was hoping for. It was raining on the night of May 18, 2019, and Dominique called Kinnie for a lift to her car. He was working on patrol in downtown Square and picked her up. Dominique then drove back to her home and called him on the way. She was home alone that Saturday night as her children were spending the weekend with a relative. At the end of his shift, Kinnie went back to a barn where the police horses were kept and left his mobile phone there, presumably so that his movement could not be traced. He then got back in his marked patrol car and drove to Dominique's house, parking the vehicle around the corner. The home was unlocked and Kinnie entered in the early hours on May 19th, finding Dominique asleep in her bed. Crept back out to his car, collected his loaded police-issued gun, a 9mm pistol, and went back to his girlfriend at around 2:05 a.m. He shot her once in the head. Leaving Dominique dead, Kinnie drove back to the barn to collect his phone and text her at 2:20 a.m. as though nothing had happened. As he drove back to his own home, Kinnie tossed the shell casing, which was jammed in his own pistol, out the window and onto the street. It was never found. Later that Sunday afternoon, Dominique's 4 children returned from their weekend away at around 2 p.m. Her 8-year-old son was encouraged to enter first to play a prank on his mother. He was sent in with a toy snake and told to lure her out to scare her with it. Instead, the poor boy discovered his mother's body and had to go outside and tell his siblings that she was dead. Investigators quickly discovered the affair with Kinnie. As one of their own was a prime suspect, they called in the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation to take over the case. That night, Kinnie was questioned. He admitted the affair but denied having anything to do with Dominique's death. He even suggests that she might have committed suicide, even though no gun was found at the scene. However, the evidence was starting to stack up against him. There was even security footage from Dominique's house that showed Kinnie's patrol car arriving and leaving. The next day, Kinnie was arrested. This time when he was questioned, he admitted he had killed his mistress. It rocked the Oxford Police Department, and the case exuberated already strained race relation in the state. It was a white police officer killing a black victim in cold blood and consequently attracting a lot of media attention. Shortly after his arrest, Kinnie was transferred to a county jail, and a photo surfaced of him eating a meal at a guard's desk unsupervised. When a judge considered bail, Dominique's family were outraged, believing Kinnie was getting special treatment because he was in the police force. But Kinnie was fired from his job and charged with capital murder, which meant that he had faced the death penalty. While he pleaded not guilty, Dominique's family told the media that Kinnie had been controlling, that he'd sneak into her house on previous occasions and was worried that his wife might discover the affair. This, they said, had led to tension between the pair. Kinnie's wife divorced him and moved away while the case slowly made its way through the legal system. Then Kinnie made a plea deal. In exchange for him pleading guilty, he would avoid facing the death penalty. It was a crime of passion, his lawyer argued. It got to the point he couldn't get out. He wanted his life back. But it was clear to everyone that Kinnie should have just walked away. Instead, Dominique had been left dead. In July of 2020, Kinnie faced sentencing. His defense said Dominique had threatened to tell his wife and had been demanding more money. They said the strain of it all had pushed him to the point where he broke. But prosecutors said Kinnie simply didn't want his wife to find out about their affair and put his mistress out of the picture with a bullet to the head. They said Kinnie's action had been deliberate, including leaving his mobile phone at the horse barn before committing the crime and parking his vehicle out of sight. After finding Dominique asleep, he had fetched his gun and returned to kill her in cold blood. That was not an emotional action, it was calculated. Kinnie, 40, was sentenced to life without the chance of parole. He made no statement and was taken into prison. Outside the court, Dominique's family gathered with t-shirts that read "Rest in Peace" and "Justice for Dominique." They had wanted the death penalty but said they were pleased Kinnie was behind bars for life. They said his cruel action had left Dominique's children without their loving mother. The son who found his mother's body had suffered terrible nightmares. Dominique's family have now filed a civil rights lawsuit against the city of Oxford and Kinnie. In the claim for $5 million, the family said that officials failed to supervise Kinnie and he was technically on duty when Dominique was murdered. Kinnie had been questioned over his first wife's suspicious death, and while it was ruled a suicide, the lawsuit claimed he was asked to resign at the time, and that was when he moved to the Oxford district to escape his past. Dominique Clayton family was later rewarded $2 million for her death. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Dominique Clayton, children, her mother, and the rest of her family that she left behind. May her soul rest in peace. Until next time on the Meaningful Talk Crime Doc, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch up with you guys later in the comment section.